The horrific finding of a young woman's body, severed at the waist, gripped the nation's attention, sparking a relentless pursuit by both the Los Angeles police and the FBI to interrogate numerous suspects nationwide in the hunt for Elizabeth Short's killer or killers. Elizabeth Short was, known as the Black Dahlia, was an American woman found murdered in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles, California, on January 15, 1947. Her case became highly publicized owing to the horrific nature of the crime. So, who was Elizabeth Short? Born on July 29, 1924, in the Hyde Park area of Boston, Massachusetts, Elizabeth Short was the third of 5 daughters born to Cleo Alvin Short Jr. and his wife, Phoebe May Sawyer. Although originally from Boston, Short spent her formative years in both New England and Florida before eventually relocating to California, where her father resided. While it is widely believed that she harbored aspirations of becoming an actress, there are no records of her having any credited acting roles or employment in the entertainment industry during her time in Los Angeles. Following her tragic death, Short would become known posthumously as the Black Dahlia, a nickname bestowed by newspapers of the era known for sensationalizing crimes. The moniker may have been inspired by the title of a film noir murder mystery, The Blue Dahlia. In the aftermath of Short's gruesome murder, the Los Angeles Police Department initiated a thorough investigation, which resulted in the identification of over 150 potential suspects. However, despite their efforts, the case ultimately remained unsolved, with no arrests made. Elizabeth's unsolved murder and the details surrounding it have had a lasting cultural intrigue, generating various theories and public speculation. Her life and death have been the basis of numerous books and films, and her murder is frequently cited as one of the most famous unsolved murders in U.S. history, as well as one of the oldest unsolved cases in Los Angeles County. It has likewise been credited by historians as one of the first major crimes in post-war America to capture national attention. At the age of 22, in July 1946, Elizabeth relocated to Los Angeles to visit Army Air Force Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling, an acquaintance from Florida who was stationed at the Naval Reserve Air Base in Long Beach. She spent the last 6 months of her life in Southern California, primarily in the Los Angeles area. In the period leading up to her death, she worked as a waitress and rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. Descriptions of Elizabeth vary, with some portraying her as an aspiring or would-be actress. According to certain sources, she did harbor dreams of becoming a film star. On January 9, 1947, Short returned to her Los Angeles residence after a brief trip to San Diego with Robert "Red" Manley, a 25-year-old married salesman she had been dating. Manley claimed to have dropped Elizabeth off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, where she was scheduled to meet her visiting sister from Boston later that afternoon. Some accounts suggest that hotel staff remembered seeing Elizabeth using the lobby telephone. Shortly afterward, she was reportedly spotted by patrons of the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge. On the morning of January 15, 1947, Elizabeth's naked body, severed into 2 pieces, was found in a vacant lot on the west side of South Norton Avenue, midway between Coliseum Street and West 39th Street in the neighborhood of Leimert Park. At the time, Leimert Park was largely undeveloped. Elizabeth's severely mutilated body was completely severed at the waist and drained of blood, leaving her skin a pallid white. Medical examiners determined that she had been dead for around 10 hours before the discovery, leaving her time of death either sometime during the evening of January 14th or the early morning hours of January 15th. The body had apparently been washed by the killer. Short's face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating an effect known as the Glasgow smile. She had several cuts on her thigh and breasts. The lower half of her body was positioned a foot away from the upper, and her intestines had been tucked neatly beneath her buttocks. The corpse had been posed, with her hands over her head, her elbows bent at right angles. An autopsy of Elizabeth's body was performed on January 16, 1947, by Frederick Newbar, the Los Angeles County coroner. Newbar's autopsy report stated that Short was 5 feet 5 inches, 1.65 m tall, weighed 115 pounds, and had light blue eyes, brown hair, and badly decayed teeth. There were ligature marks on her ankles, wrists, and neck, and an irregular laceration with superficial tissue loss on her right breast. Newbar also noted superficial lacerations on the right forearm, left upper arm, and the lower left side of the chest. The cause of death was determined to be hemorrhaging from facial lacerations and shock from blows to the head and face. Evidence suggested Elizabeth might have been sexually assaulted. Samples taken for sperm presence testing returned negative results. Elizabeth was identified through her fingerprints sent to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She had been arrested in September 1943 for underage drinking when she was 19 years old, although the legal drinking age was 21. On January 21, 1947, a person claiming to be Elizabeth's killer made a call to James Richardson, editor of The Examiner, praising the newspaper's coverage of the case. The caller stated he planned to turn himself in eventually, but not before allowing the police to pursue him further. Additionally, he informed Richardson to expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail. On January 24th, a suspicious manila envelope was found, addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Words had been cut and pasted from newspaper clippings onto the envelope, with a prominent message reading, "Here is Dahlia's belongings letter to follow." Inside, Elizabeth's birth certificate, business cards, photographs, handwritten names on paper scraps, and an address book with Mark Hansen embossed on the cover were discovered. The envelope had been meticulously cleaned with gasoline, similar to the cleaning of Elizabeth's body, leading authorities to suspect it had been sent by her killer. Despite efforts to wipe it clean, several partial fingerprints were lifted from the envelope and sent to the FBI for analysis. Unfortunately, the prints were damaged in transit and could not be properly examined. On the same day the envelope arrived at the Examiner, a handbag and a black suede shoe were reportedly found atop a garbage can in an alley near Norton Avenue, 2 miles from the crime scene. Although police recovered the items, they had also been wiped clean with gasoline, erasing any potential fingerprints. On March 14th, what appeared to be a suicide note written in pencil on a scrap of paper was discovered tucked inside a shoe among a pile of men's clothing near the ocean's edge at Breeze Avenue in Venice. The note expressed frustration at the police's failure to apprehend the Black Dahlia's killer and confessed to being too cowardly to surrender. The note ended with an apology to someone named Mary. The clothing, including a blue herringbone tweed coat and trousers, a brown and white t-shirt, white jockey shorts, tan socks, and size 8 tan moccasin leisure shoes, provided no clues to the owner's identity. Mark Hansen, the owner of the address book found in the packet, was swiftly considered a suspect by the police. Hansen, a wealthy local nightclub and theater owner, had been an acquaintance of Elizabeth and was known to have hosted her at his home with friends. He confirmed that the purse and shoe discovered in the alley belonged to Elizabeth. Ann Toth, Elizabeth's friend and roommate, informed investigators that she had recently rebuffed sexual advances from Hansen, suggesting a possible motive for his involvement in her murder. However, Hansen was ultimately cleared of suspicion in the case. In addition to Hansen, the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, interviewed over 150 men in the following weeks whom they deemed potential suspects. Robert "Red" Manley, one of the last individuals to see Elizabeth alive, was also investigated, but was exonerated after passing multiple polygraph examinations. Police also questioned several individuals listed in Hansen's address book, including Martin Lewis, an acquaintance of Elizabeth's. Lewis provided an alibi for the date of Elizabeth's murder, stating he was in Portland, Oregon, visiting his terminally ill father-in-law. A total of 750 investigators from the LAPD and other agencies, including 400 sheriff's deputies and 250 California State Patrol officers, worked on the case during its initial stages. Numerous locations, such as storm drains throughout Los Angeles, abandoned structures, and various sites along the Los Angeles River, were searched for potential evidence, but no significant findings were made. City Councilman Lloyd G. Davis offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to Elizabeth's killer. Following the reward announcement, several individuals came forward with confessions, most of which were dismissed by the police as false. Some of the false confessors were charged with obstruction of justice. On January 26th, another handwritten letter arrived at the Examiner, stating, "Here it is. Turning in wed, Jan. 29, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Avenger." The letter provided a location where the alleged killer claimed they would surrender. Police awaited the supposed killer at the specified location on January 29th, but no one appeared. Instead, at 1 p.m., the Examiner offices received another cut-and-pasted letter stating, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified. The graphic nature of the crime and the subsequent letters to the Examiner resulted in widespread media coverage, both locally and nationally. Many publications sensationalized reports, suggesting Elizabeth had been tortured for hours before her death. Lead investigator Captain Jack Donahue speculated to the press that Elizabeth's murder likely occurred in a remote building or shack on the outskirts of Los Angeles, with her body then transported into the city for disposal. Due to the precise cuts and dissection of Elizabeth's body, the LAPD investigated the possibility that the perpetrator might have been a surgeon, doctor, or someone with medical knowledge, which has raised suspicions about yet another suspect in the case. Shortly after receiving the news of his father's death, Steve Hoddle found himself sorting through his belongings. Though Steve's father, George Hoddle, loomed large throughout his early childhood, their relationship had always been strained. George was a grandiose doctor, with a distant personality, who abandoned the family shortly after Steve's 9th birthday, eventually moving far away to the Philippines. As he went through his father's possessions, Steve found a photo album tucked away in a box. It was small enough to fit in his palm and bound in wood. But towards the back, something caught his eye. 2 pictures of a young woman, her eyes cast downward, with curly, deep black hair. Steve still doesn't know why he had the idea, but as he looked at the images, he thought to himself, "My God, that looks like the Black Dahlia." The personal connection between Short and George Hoddle suggested by the album photos seemed outrageous. Hers was one of the most brutal murders in American history, and, after the Zodiac killer's shooting spree in San Francisco, perhaps the most famous unsolved crime in California. But from this moment on, Steve was hooked. In just over 23 years, Steve had diligently risen through the ranks of the Los Angeles Police Department, establishing a reputation as an unfaltering homicide detective. So like any good cop, Steve started digging, and the details began to add up. A handwriting expert determined that there was a strong likelihood that his father's handwriting matched the script on some of the notes the killer sent to the LAPD, but the results were inconclusive. The photo he found in his father's possession was also never confirmed to be Elizabeth. What he has been focusing on is that his father's profession can afford him the ability to precisely cut the body with such precision, making him a compelling suspect. And there is also the secret room that Steve talks about, which no one was allowed to enter, but only his father. Could this room be where Elizabeth's body was buried? In the archives of UCLA, Steve found a folder containing receipts for contracting work on his childhood home. One of the receipts showed a purchase a few days before Short's murder of 10 5-pound bags of concrete, the same size and brand found near Short's body that police believe her killer used to carry her. As a civilian, Steve doesn't have access to the original police files and, as an officer admitted to him in his only meeting with the LAPD, the majority of the physical evidence has been lost over the years. Most of the witnesses are dead, as are the original cops that worked the case. Hoddles still have not proved beyond a reasonable doubt that his father was the Black Dahlia killer. By the spring of 1947, Elizabeth's murder had become a cold case with few new leads. The case garnered notoriety, prompting numerous confessions over the years, many of which were proven false. During the initial investigation, police received 60 confessions, predominantly from men. Since then, over 500 individuals have confessed to the crime, including some who weren't even born at the time of her death. In 2024, the controversial murder case will be spanning 77 years as it remains unsolved,